Caddyshack hit theaters on July 25th, 1980, almost 2 months later than the planned release date. And it had already started off on the wrong foot.
I made a huge mistake at the press junket of suggesting that we put Bill, Ted, Chevy, and Rodney on stage together.
We had the press junket in New York, and that was a disaster.
They were just kind of nasty to the press and kind of nasty to each other. It was so bad that someone went back in a local newspaper and wrote, if this is the new Hollywood, let's have the old Hollywood back.
By then, Doug Kenney had had enough of Hollywood, new or old.
He just had a hard time, I think, assimilating into the Hollywood thing.
Caddyshack wasn't under his control. It wasn't the film he wanted.
After the premiere, critics were not kind.
How did the critics like Caddyshack? They hated it.
I remember the New York Times called the film an amiable mess.
The reviews for Caddyshack stunk. You should go back and look at Gene Shalit's review on the Today Show. Do you remember him? He's a film critic.
Caddyshack is not about the Mikado's daughter-in-law elect. It's about as rotten a movie as a slop to screen this summer.
And he just dissed the film.
This time, Chevy Chase and the wearisome Bill Murray waste our time in a sketchy bramble of golfers, caddies, and country clubs. Even worse than Murray is Ted Knight. He is truly awful. Caddyshack is a hazard, and those who pay to see it may be teed off.
What's gratifying about it is, now it's 30 years later, and, Caddyshack is Caddyshack, and Gene Shalit's Gene Shalit.
Even so, Caddyshack did not live up to the high bar the success of Animal House had set.
It wasn't Animal House, and that's what people were hoping for or expecting from us.
The cast and crew of Caddyshack felt a sting of professional disappointment in the wake of the generally poor reviews the movie received. Just 2 months later, though, they were struck even harder by a personal tragedy. On August 27th, Doug Kenney's body was found at the bottom of a cliff in Hawaii.
Doug never got to see the film be a success. He got to see the premiere, he got to see the bad review in the LA Times, and a few days later, he was gone.
People say, that it was the failure of Caddyshack that pushed him over the edge, but that wasn't true. I mean, he was pretty depressed anyway.
I was in the office with John when we got the news. He said, he must have thought he could fly.
Doug was a genius, and like a lot of comic geniuses, he was sort of tortured too.
He just knew how to be funny, but more important, Doug Kenney knew how to be a human being.
He had a tendency to make you feel special.
I loved him completely, and, it was, it sort of woke everybody up. And Doug was the first to go. The next year, John Belushi died. So it was like a wake-up call for all of us to start looking at our lifestyles and, figure out who we were and who we wanted to be. And, is this good? Should anyone be living this way?
But the tapestry of that film includes many, many fibers created and woven by Doug Kenney and would be utterly different without Doug's contribution.
At the point where he died, he really had not quite seen the fruits of Caddyshack because I think it grew and grew and grew in popularity, and I regret that for him.
Caddyshack has indeed grown in popularity over the years.
I'm having a little party at the yacht Sunday. I'm christening my new sloop. What are you doing Saturday? No plans? Great. How would you like to mow my lawn?
Although no one can quite put their finger on why.
Well, if anybody really knew the answer to why Caddyshack worked, there would be a path beaten to their door. Why did Caddyshack work? Please tell me.
Much of the cast and crew of Caddyshack is still making people laugh. Chevy Chase and Bill Murray went on to become two of the biggest comedy stars in Hollywood. And Harold Ramis, having gone on to write and star in Stripes and Ghostbusters, and direct Groundhog Day, as well as many others, has inspired a whole new generation of comedy writers and directors.
Harold Ramis was the forerunner to Judd Apatow, and he still is. I think Judd will say that.
Michael O'Keefe went on to appear in countless films and TV shows. He's also become a Zen priest.
Doug was the one who turned me on to Zen a little bit, and he turned me on to Basho.
The Zen philosopher Basho once wrote, "A flute with no holes is not a flute. And a donut with no hole is Danish."
Scott Columbia hit box office gold with the Porky's movies.
Tell me, gentlemen, wouldn't you be likely to toss down a few if the woman you love turned her back on you?
And is now an acting coach and musician in California. Following Caddyshack, Cindy Morgan starred in the sci-fi hit Tron.
I knew you'd escape. They haven't built a circuit that could hold you.
It was her last big film role. She now lives in Florida and is writing a book on her Caddyshack experience. Rodney Dangerfield continued his successful career as a stand-up comedian and went on to write and star in Back to School with Harold Ramis.
Hey folks, it's on me. Shakespeare for everyone, okay? You too, honey. Ooh, I like to tame your shrew.
He made many more film and television appearances until he died in 2004. Ted Knight went back on TV as the star of the hit series Too Close for Comfort until his death from cancer in 1986. Despite the movie's dancing gophers, unabashed silliness, and cheesy special effects, Caddyshack remains a timeless classic. And unlike most movies, which tend to fade away over the years, Caddyshack somehow manages to get better.
And when it went on television, it had 2 stars in the TV guide.
As time has gone on, I think Caddyshack has just gained and gained and gained.
10 years after that, I looked and it had 3 stars. And I thought, well, it's like a fine wine. It's just apparently getting better the longer you leave it in the can.
And it's the kind of thing that dads actually pass to their kids, who pass to their kids.
We're all linked together. There's 30th anniversaries, there's bar mitzvahs, there's brisks, there's this, there's that. There's every kind of thing. It's like it's been born 25 times.
This movie is so important to so many people. You can't have a conversation without somebody bringing it up.
And not only will they bring it up, they'll know all the lines.
Hey, freeze, gopher.
I enjoy skinny skiing,
I want a hamburger, no a cheeseburger.
going to bullfights on acid.
Yesterday.
I want a hot dog, I want french fries, noonie, double turns.
I was really tired of having fun all the time.
I ain't gonna pay no 50 cents for no Coke.
You, could you loofah my stretch marks?
You want to tie me up with some of your ties? Tie?
I got that going for me, which is nice.
Until 300, no matter what I was involved with, including Batman, the only thing that any guy would care about, it didn't matter, any movie I was involved with or greenlit or made at the studios or produced, it was always about, wow, dude, you did Caddyshack.
I was making a television pilot, and the wardrobe designer came up to me and said she was a big Caddyshack fan. And she could tell that I wasn't, like, thrilled that she had mentioned that. And she then said, you know, the reason I mentioned that was because my father was a big Caddyshack fan when it first came out. And he died recently, and he was in the hospital with leukemia. And one of the only times he relaxed when he was in the hospital was when we would put Caddyshack on. And we would sit around and watch Caddyshack with my dad while he was dying. And, you know, that kind of gave it some significance for me. It may not be the most artistic film ever made, but there is something to be said for making people laugh.
When we got the go-ahead to make this film, Doug said to me, "You are going to have the best time of your life." And he was right.
Unlikeliest comedy superstar.